I still feel hurt and ashamed. Maybe we're being too difficult. Were we even friends? Maybe we're not going in the same direction. I admit I did hurt her. Maybe this isn't my person. It really prevents them from taking any ownership. Your self-esteem is shot. You need the structure and security. It's an all or nothing principle. I'm so blown away that I can even talk about this. What do I gain from holding on to this pain? Hurting somebody is a choice. What was the biggest heartbreak lesson of my 20s? Now, I'll be the first one to say I've been through some heartbreak moments within my family, friends, as well as romantically. And I've always wondered, is there a way to make sure it doesn't happen again? Because these moments were out of the blue. I didn't see them coming. But is there really a way to prevent it from happening? Now, sometimes we're so deceived that emotional safety is not important in a relationship. Maybe we're asking too much. Maybe we're being too difficult. But are we? So, it's Vancouver, 2023 summer, and it's a few days after an unhealthy outburst with a roommate, and I finally have the time to sit down with her. Now, don't get me wrong, I still feel hurt and ashamed, and I've put it off for a couple of days because I really didn't want to have that conversation. But as we're sitting on that section on opposite ends of the room, and she pulls out a laptop to read me a list of things that I've done to offend her, I'm in shock because 6 months I've spent time with her and she couldn't even tell me to move a guitar. When I tell you how much that changed the way I look at relationships, what were those 6 months really like for her? We have a tendency to overestimate the weight commitment carries in a relationship. I mean, just because somebody's sharing space with you, it doesn't mean it's a real commitment. Have you been at the moment where you're actually checking, were we even friends? See, the challenge was not that I regretted spending time with her. My aha moment was, hey, communication is really important to me in our new relationship because I never want to feel like that again. I felt like I was set up for a situation that could have been avoided. Now let's talk about misconceptions. And what do you think my misconception was? Remember how we talked about truth and trust being cut from different clothes? My misconception was that, you know, we want the same thing out of a relationship. We view relationship the same way. Now, as I covered in the previous video, remember the principle. Everybody has a right to their own beliefs. The process I had to go through was understanding that it's not my job to take ownership for their actions. It's not my job to go into their childhood and change the way they see relationships, the way they see commitment, the way they see love. Now, the purpose of this is understanding maybe this isn't my person. Maybe we're not going the same way. Maybe we're not going in the same direction. My biggest misconception is everybody sees relationships the same way. Now, I'm not saying she's not right. I admit I did hurt her. But why do you think the trust was broken then? Most women I speak to on a daily basis say the relationship just ended because the person did what they did. They lied, manipulated, they hurt. It ended with the way they dealt with the repair of conflict. It was at that point that they realized that there's nothing in it for them, nothing worth fighting for. So many people get to the point of a relationship where they're just completely running on hope. Hope that the person will change. Hope that they will see your worth. Or even better yet, hope that they will know how much they hurt you. But sometimes when we sit with the truth, our hope is not a strategy. Because we're intentionally misdiagnosing commitment in the relationships that we hold dear. And we're choosing to play a passive role. Now, we've just got a few more minutes left today, so let's jump back into it. How do we stop misdiagnosing miscommitment? And what was my biggest heartbreak lesson? Is it okay if I just combine those together? There was a time in my life when I failed to understand loving somebody is a choice, hurting somebody is a choice. We also had the chance to manipulate, to lie, to hurt our partner, but we didn't. When they don't choose to honor your love, your partnership, the truth is it doesn't matter that much. What was my biggest heartbreak lesson? It's not knowing what commitment looks like to different people. And never asking, what's in this for me? I might have been analytical today, and I want to continuously clarify. What's in it for me is not a selfish place to be at. It's not a selfish question to ask. It's continuously making the case for trust in your relationship. Now, let me tell you about Carrie and how she helped me heal from that heartbreak. Have you ever wondered, how do you move on from a heartbreak? That's a question I struggled with for 5, 6, 7 years. Because I just didn't know that there was a way to get over it and make sure it doesn't happen again. So I'm going to show you a few steps. Now, this story might be more legend than fact. October 2021, Carrie's a professor at the University of Wisconsin. She's seated at her table in her office. She's drafting out a midterm. Now she's feeling a little nostalgic because earlier on that day, she ran into one of her former classmates, Sarah. Sarah was bringing her daughter to university, and Sarah had opened up boxes from their memories together in university that day. And she had come across some pictures, some sweatshirts, some letters, and she had scanned them and promised to send them over to Carrie. So Carrie went to her email to look for these scanned copies of these memories, and she finds an email from Mark. Now, Mark is somebody she met in her internship after her first year of university. See, Mark was married, but he was unhappy in his relationship. So Carrie had a 1-year affair with Mark. One day she goes to work, and Mark calls her into his office and tells her, "Oh my God, we can't be together. My wife found out. She gave me an ultimatum, and if I don't stop seeing you, I can't see my kid." She knew that if I throw a tantrum right now, I'm going to lose every other opportunity. So she just pretended like it didn't happen. So a few weeks later, she comes down with a cold, and she feels like it's fatigue. She can't seem to shake it. So she decides to go home to take a break. She moves back from New York, where her internship was, to Wisconsin. Now, I think it's a week into her stay, and she decides to take a pregnancy test. The pregnancy test comes back as positive. Now, during that same week, the 9/11 attacks happen, and her friend, Jimmy, who is a first responder, dies while trying to save people from the attacks. Now, due to the series of unfortunate events, and she's been holding it in, trying to be strong, she breaks down. And when the dawn breaks, she's inconsolable for days. And she calls into work, and she cancels her internship, and she just moves back. She asks somebody to pack up all her stuff. She's making changes, and her mom sits down with her and she says, "Jimmy wouldn't want this for you." Now, her mom thought that Jimmy was the guy she was in love with. Carrie never corrected her. So 20 years later, present day, her twin girls are proud daughters to her father, Jimmy, who put his life on the line to look for survivors during the 9/11 attacks. And they've always told the story of a proud birthright, of proud bravery they got from a father they didn't ever get to know. Now, at that moment, she didn't even think twice. The lie protected her daughters from ever feeling disposable like she did. She deleted Mark's email, never opening to see what he wanted, and just went on to look for what she was looking for. Now, the big question is, why didn't Carrie give Mark another chance? Think about it. How many of you would want to know why? Now, the old way of thinking this would be risk everything, tell him the truth. Now, I have hours and hours of content on healing from heartbreak, but I don't have a lot of time, so we have to keep it short. I know some of you want to go a little bit deeper, so go ahead and click the subscribe button and follow for more. But now, let's talk about how Carrie helped me heal from my own heartbreak. First, let's talk about the anxiety that comes with resentment built from the broken promises and the mismatched actions from Mark. So the lack of clarity from Mark was a breeding ground for heartbreak. It happens in any relationship. Just to be clear, Mark didn't make any promises. Yes. Carrie never clarified anything. Yes, but takers in any relationship thrive on ambiguity. They thrive on that place of the unknown. It really prevents them from taking any ownership or being held accountable to their actions. And if you're never going to take any ownership for your action, that breeds resentment on one side. Which brings us to our first game, mind games. Now, the second form of anxiety that Carrie was faced with was feeling disposable. Like what she needed didn't matter or shouldn't matter. Which brings me to the second M, mindfulness of boundaries, which is the most important thing. If you could take something away from this video, when your partner's actions don't match the words and ownership is not taken from those actions, your self-esteem is shot because you feel unworthy of the value that you require for a healthy relationship. Anytime in a relationship where you're left questioning your role in that relationship, it means you're lacking clarity about the relationship. And that is something that you're needing for that relationship. If you didn't need clarity, that discomfort wouldn't be there. You need the structure and security that comes from the clarity. In our next video, I'll tell you a story of kill the lion, save the girl. But now let's talk about anxiety number 3. Just like you're learning how to ride a bicycle or a car, there are times when you fall off the bicycle or another car appears out of nowhere. However, we learn from our weaknesses and we turn them into strengths, and we learn to adapt. Anxiety number 3 is one of the hard things to restore that comes with somebody breaks your trust. It's always the fear that if he's done it before, what's to stop him from doing it again? Which brings me to the third N. Moving on with accountability, understanding that an unhealthy partner will always choose to keep unhealthy coping mechanisms instead of adapting to new actions that would sustain a healthy relationship. So you can either choose to ignore their faults of the other person and focus on the benefits of being with them, or completely cut that person out of your life. It's an all or nothing principle here. You can't do one or the other, because both parties have to be in line with the same goal. We're either pretending it didn't happen, or we're going to choose to make sure it doesn't happen again. Tomorrow we're going to talk about one-sided second chances. Now the question is, how do you move on from a heartbreak? I'm so blown away that I can even talk about this, because it's something I struggled with. I had to be my first real friend. I had to have those first conversations with myself. We have a tendency to forget that we're getting something out of holding on to the relationship. It's feeding in something within us, something that we're having a hard time facing. Have you ever asked yourself, what do I gain from holding on to this pain? What do I gain from holding on to this person, to this grudge? When you have answered that question, like how I answered that question for myself, you'll be able to move on from the heartbreak. On those hard days when the memories get too bad, you have something to hold on to. If this video has been helpful to you, subscribe for more. I'm Coach Rachel, and I can't wait to connect with you again.